So we're rounding up monopoly and monopsony. So going to monopsony. When I talk about a monopsony is a market structure that exists or is a market condition in which we have only one buyer dictating what is being sold in terms of price and quantity. So yeah, I wrote a monopsony is a market condition in which there is only one buyer, the monopsonist. That's the buyer in the market. Then we have what we call a monopsony power. We have a monopsony power because the monopsonist decide about price and quantity. So monopsonist power, this refers to the market power held by a buyer, allowing them to influence the price of a good or service they purchase, often paying less than they would in a competitive market. Consumers are expected to pay a certain amount of money, certain price, a unified price in a competitive market. But when it comes to a monopsonist, because they decide, they are the one that buy the quantity, so they have influence over the price and the quantity that has to be sold. Then what are the characteristics of a monopsony? Number one. No, we don't really have them here. I just had to come up with them, okay? The first one is one buyer. In a monopsony, there's only one buyer, which gives them significant market power and control over prices and quantities of goods or service. So one of the characteristic or features of a monopsony is that there is only just one buyer, and that buyer decides about the price of a good or service. Two, low bargain power for sellers. The sellers, that means the suppliers, they don't have that ability to dictate or to negotiate about higher pay. So their negotiation skill or their negotiating power is weak based on the fact that the monopsonists decide the price and the quantity being sold. Do you understand the second point here?
Yeah.
The third one, market inefficiencies. Monopsonists may decide to buy less of the good or service in the market. This may force producers to cut wages, store unsold inventory that would have otherwise been consumed in the normal market. In a competitive market, goods will be sold at equilibrium price, which simply means there's always going to be a market clearing price. Yes or no? So it is assumed in a competitive market that all the goods produced will be sold. But in a for a monopsonist, because it might choose to buy few goods to reduce the price, means sellers will be left with a lot of unsold goods. And that might make them to reduce the numbers of workers they have or cut the wages or store goods that they are supposed to even sell if they are in a competitive market. That is inefficiency. Do you understand inefficiency there? The next one, limited innovation, sorry. Since the buyer has significant control over the market, there's less incentive for producers to produce or to improve the quality or invest in innovation. There's no incentive to move further, to improve in terms of the quality, because the buyers will definitely buy. There's no reward for the seller. Monopsonists are not going to reward you. They become a monopsonist because they want to exploit you. They want to exploit the supplier. So if you invest more, there's no reward for it. So that is disincentive for a supplier or for the seller to improve the quality produced. Do you get it? Any question about that?
No.
Okay. So that takes us to the causes of monopsony. So what are the causes of monopsony? The first one is physical isolation. And we look at physical isolation. It simply means the lack of accessibility to specific geographical location. So because it becomes a monopsony because it is the only buyer that could have access to where you are. So the rest might not have the opportunity to be there, probably because of transportational cost. So lack of accessibility might bring about monopsony. So here I wrote physical isolation. A monopsony can arise in a market that is geographically isolated or where transportation cost is high. This can limit the number of potential buyers and make it difficult for competitors to enter the market. So accessibility to specific area might make it become difficult for new buyers to come into that place. So, the cost of transporting, the cost of shipping from China is high. So let's come together, or let this business buy from China, that sells to us. So that is physical isolation. It's just remote. Do you understand? So that's one of the reasons why we could have a monopsony. The second one is limit product demand. When we talk about limit product demand, it simply means that the demand for your product might not be high. So if the demand for your product is not increasing, it might lead to just one individual wanting to buy your product. Then he or she sells to the rest. So when there's limited demand for your product, it might lead to a monopsonist. Do you get the second point there? The third one is barriers to entry. And when we talk about barriers to entry, we're talking about this high barriers to entry, such as regulations or high capital requirements, can make it difficult for new buyers to enter the market and compete with existing buyers. There could be high barrier to entries, and this could be as a result of large amount of capital to start up with. So we might I might not have you might have the financial capability to buy, but other potential customers might not have that financial capability. So because you have that finance, you might be able to buy and sell in bits to the rest of the people, the rest of the businesses, or the rest of those who have interest in that business. So that's a barrier to entry. And probably sometimes regulations from governments could also be the reason. Is it clear, please? Yes. That's the third reason. The fourth one is market consolidation. And when we talk about market consolidation, we're talking about customers coming together to consolidate, to come together to decide the quantity that has to be purchased from the supplier. So customer A, B, C, D, E, F come together, they merge and become one. So that customer now have influence over the seller. Do you understand consolidated? Yeah. So for market consolidation, I wrote, a monopsony can result from market consolidation, where several buyers merge and control a significant share of the market. So they've come together, realize that being united is more powerful and more influential than being in a unit or being separate. That could also bring or lead to a monopsony. Clear, right? Mm-hmm. Then government requirements. Government might simply be the only buyer for your product or service. Like what you said about NOC, the National Oil Corporation, right? So they are the only ones supplying. So they get all the crude and they supply to others, or the NHS in the UK too. So these ones are regulations that government through government. So it becomes difficult for you to contest with government. Do you understand the point there? That's the last one about. These are the reasons why we have the causes of a monopsony. Any question about that? Good. So go to the cost and benefits now. So go to the costs and benefits of monopsony. To the monopsonist, to the seller, to the buyer, to the buyer, to the employees. So we start with the monopsonist. The monopsonist, it gains higher profit by being able to buy at a reduced price. This reduces the cost of production, which in turn shifts its marginal cost downward. However, input supplies are expected to fall. So the benefit of monopsony to a monopsonist is that because it's a monopsonist, it can buy at a reduced price, which simply means the cost of production for a monopsonist is expected to fall, which means a monopsonist is expected to gain a higher profit. But the monopsonist is dominating a market, right? So the market the monopsonist is dominating will have a fall in its input because based on the law of supply, the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. So the inputs that are supplied for the monopsonist would reduce because there's no incentive to increase further because supplies, you pay less amount of money. And when you pay less amount of money, there's no incentive for me to produce more to produce more for you. Do you get the point here? So there's a gain for a monopsonist because it's going to gain more profit based on the fact that its cost of production are reducing. But the inputs that the monopsonist is dominating on are expected to fall based on the law of supply. Do you understand the first? Yeah. So that's about the monopsonist. They'll go to the suppliers, that the business that sells to the monopsonist. They are likely to lose out from monopsony as prices paid for their goods or services will fall. Low prices will lead to less being supplied and wages being reduced. Suppliers may keep their customers by offering lower prices. This may force them to be more efficient. Suppliers may benefit from longer-term contracts. This may in turn secure their sales and stabilize the revenue and profit. Now, to the supplier. First, the suppliers are not expected to make higher profits. Why? Because they will be offering their products to a monopsonist at a lower price. So that reduces their profitability. Yes or no? Yeah. But if they need to keep the monopsonist, they have to sell at a lower price. Yes or no? Yeah. So selling at a lower price and you wanting to make profit, it means you need to be efficient. So the idea about selling at a reduced price might lead to the supplier to be more efficient. So being efficient means you're going to be able to reduce your cost and still make profit. Do you get the point here? So a monopsonist might become an incentive for the supplier to be more efficient. Now, because the monopsonist is the only one selling in that market, it means the seller or the supplier might be able to enjoy a large long-term contract with the monopsonist. The monopsonist is said you are the only one, it's the only one buying from you. That means you might as well have a long-term contract with that monopsonist. Having a long-term contract means there will be consistency in your revenue. And that might also allow you to make more profit. Do you understand the point there? On the other hand, the only problem there is that because suppliers, they are vulnerable to monopsonists, they might have to reduce their cost through wages too. And that might demotivate their employees. Any question about suppliers?
No.
Great. Then, to customers. Now we're talking about customers to the monopsonist, right?
Yeah.
Good. They are likely to enjoy lower prices as the lower costs for the monopsonist are passed on to customers. However, there may be restriction in supply. This will be determined by the price elasticity of supply. So, for a monopsonist, because a monopsonist witnesses reduction in the cost of production, which simply means it can pass on the low cost as low prices to its own customers. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So customers are expected to buy affordable goods from the monopsonist. On the other hand, there might be restriction because the monopsonist, even irrespective of what the price is, if the price elasticity of supply for the product is inelastic, no matter what the price is, they will still not be able to get the supply. Note, from the supplier end, they won't want to supply more because there's no incentive to supply more. So whatever the monopsonist has, it's what is going to supply. So the supply of the monopsonist, the supply from the monopsonist to the customer might be less. So that will be determined by the price elasticity of supply. If it is inelastic or elastic.
Yes.
If the PS is inelastic, it means irrespective of the price, the quantity supply cannot increase. But if the PES is elastic, it means irrespective of the price, the quantity supply might increase. I think it's clear for customers. Then the next one is employees. For the employees, we have to look at we have to look towards the end of the monopsonist. We have to look for employees. We have to check the monopsonist and the supplier. For the monopsonist, we cannot really tell because it depends on the total number of goods it's able to get from the supplier. So it might be able to increase its supply. It might be able to increase the numbers of its employees or let them remain the same. But that will be determined by the numbers of goods available to be sold. But the only thing we know about the monopsonist is that it's going to have reduced cost of production, which gives it the ability to employ more workers. So it is left for the monopsonist to increase the numbers of employees it has or not. But for the supplier, we can vividly talk about the supplier because the supplier is expected to reduce its numbers of workers because a monopsonist will buy less. Do you understand? A monopsonist will buy less, except if you are selling at a reduced price. So definitely, for the seller, they are going to have fewer workers. Do you understand? The monopsonist, what determines about the numbers of employees the monopsonist will have is based on its market relationship. But for the supplier or the seller, it is expected to have fewer workers because monopsonist is expected to buy less. So that ends monopsony. Any question about it?
No.